What's up, guys? Ming the Merciless here with another PokerVIP.com video brought to you on Global Poker. If you guys haven't checked out Global Poker, they got all kinds of sweet tournaments floating around. They keep increasing prize pools and rewards and benefits, and they got sweet-ass avatars, and it's just a cool site, and you should check it out. We're in the big blind here with 9-6 offsuit. We're going to go ahead and fold here to the minimum 3-bet from Nutty Nuts on the short stack. Not too much we would have done on this flop anyway if we had continued in the hand. Nutty Nuts checks the king-high board, which is kind of interesting. It is a good board texture to be continuation betting if you are going to be re-raising. A minimum 3-bet could be any sort of combination of hand, really. It would just be like a pocket pair, could be like ace-jack. A lot of different things could be going on. A small bet goes in from all three of the players on the turn. Let's see what happens on this river, which is a bit of an inconsequential river. We're going to check the queen-5 offsuit against the button limp. We do have the queen of hearts here and a pair. We're probably going to be check calling this flop with the queen of hearts. If we didn't have the queen of hearts, we'd mostly just be folding. We could be beat here 10 ways from Sunday. That's a good turn card for us. If your opponent tends to be on the aggressive side, then I would be betting this turn and leading out from an exploitative standpoint. If we don't know anything about him, the standard play is just going to be to check. He can bet a 10. He can bet an 8. He overbets, which is kind of interesting. I think we're just going to go ahead and check raise with the queen of hearts in our hand. It means he's more likely to have straightforward combos here for value rather than the draws on the board. So if we end up eating dirt here, we're just going to have to get boned. That's obviously a pretty terrible card for us. One of the worst cards in the deck. And now we're basically just beating jacks, queens, kings, and aces. We're just going to have to check this river, hope he checks back, and we beat the jacks. That's good. But yeah, there's plenty of 10x combos he's going to have in that spot, so we can go ahead and just give up on that river. And here I'm going to mix my play up. We're going to go ahead and go with a continuation bet this time on the queen high board here. It's relatively dry. We do have the 2 overcards, the backdoor straight draw. In a 3-way pot, you're going to get a little bit more straightforward play from your opponent. So overall, it's pretty fair. Jack 5, we're going to raise suited, not offsuit here. We definitely just get rid of that one. And against a guy named Dr. Rungood, who knows if we're going to get a lot of fold equity or not. We'll just kind of figure it out as we go. But we're certainly going to start with raising blind versus blind with a lot of those suited combinations. Like I said, I think I may have even suggested in the last video series that I did to not open that wide, maybe Jack 7 suited-ish, something like that. But today we're just in one of those run-it-over days, perhaps, just feeling a little froggy, a little fresh. We're going to go ahead and isolate here with a queen 10 offsuit on the button. Not exactly the most optimal situation, especially against an under-the-gun limper, but nonetheless, a playable hand. We have position, and we're going to play that situation just that way. We're not going to limp the button. We're not going to fold. Pretty good board texture for us in general. Relatively wet, so we'll go ahead and continuation bet 2/3 to 3/4 pot. We will isolate with the king-jack offsuit. Same sort of scenario. Playable enough hand. 5-2 of hearts will be folding. We get flatted on the button with our king-jack, and we don't have the king of spades here. We don't have anything going on this board texture. It's relatively connected, and we have 4 players in the pot. We don't have the king of spades going for us or anything like that, so we're just going to check and completely give up. If a guy had a 7 now, he's very happy with his hand, so we'll continue giving up. We're basically just done with this hand. We will raise up with queen-jack offsuit. Give it up with the king-jack and just kind of look for any information that we can get that's good. The Spiritovich guy is on 2 tables, so he's most likely some sort of a reg. He's 3-betting us, and we're going to have plenty of combinations to defend with. We don't know that he's over 3-betting. We're just going to go ahead and fold this combo. Flat with suited combos, 4-bet bluff with a different combo. For the most part, queen-jack is... it's not all that great. If we were cut off or button versus a 3-bet and we knew that he 3-bet at a high percentage, then we'd certainly never be folding. There's plenty of times when we're going to be playing queen-jack offsuit versus a 3-bet, but in this exact case, we'll just go ahead and pass on it. If you got me, you got me. It's okay. You're going to get got sometimes. 3-4 offsuit. I'm not really a big fan of limping this. I like limping hands that are playable in a sense that they can make straights and flushes, so it's not unplayable, but still not amazing in a multi-way pot out of position with just 4 high. No, we'll just get the hell out of Dodge. It's better with other combinations just because they can make stronger hands, stronger pairs. This will often be the case, you know, if we were in there with like 10 jack offsuit, it's like no-brainer defend because we can make top pair much higher percentage of the time than pair of fours is going to be top pair. And it looks like we've got a 10-cent lead and a raise over here from Reginald. We'll pay attention to that. That betting a 10th pot or whatever might be a weak play from our good friend Roman. And we have Queen 5 offsuit, so we're mostly going to be folding this combination. Not much to really say or do. Dr. Rungood limps it in. Tovich isolates. We have a limp call. Ace 9 5. Not as many sets of 5 because we have one of those in our hand. I would assume that Spirit is going to continuation bet here, standard sizing, and Dr. Rungood definitely going to have a number of folding combinations there. King Deuce offsuit going to be a fold. King Jack offsuit definitely going to be defending here. No reason to 3-bet. Just call. Not a great board texture for us in the 4-way pot. Mostly just going to be check folding. The danger here is that guy, he might have a 9, although it's not very likely for this sizing. It's more likely that he has either a 7 or some sort of a weirdo straight draw. But the fact is that on this board texture, we could be drawing dead, first of all, and, well, to a straight flush, perhaps. But that's the other thing, is that if we hit our pair, then we could be beaten a lot by somebody who has trip 9s or pocket 7s, and we might not even have the best king or jack, depending. So that's just a precarious position for us to be calling. Heads up, we would never really fold there, but the presence of the 2 players behind and the issue of our hand being dominated when we do improve sometimes means that that's a relatively suspect spot. Like if that guy did have a straight draw in his range and we hit a jack and he had 8-10, then of course hitting a jack would be a very bad card for us. We don't know which cards are going to be good or bad for the most part, and we're certainly not going to be playing a big pot. 2 guys behind. All the variables are just, they're lined up to folding. Whereas if it was a heads-up scenario and we were getting 9-1 in that spot, we'd never really fold. We'd just call as if he had checked and just go from there. Sometimes we'll get to showdown. Sometimes we'll look to turn our hand into a bluff if he shows weakness. A lot of different things can happen. 9 deuce offsuit, going to be folding that combo on both of the tables. Lucky us. All right. Shag is checking on table 1. Nutty Nuts, what's he going to do? 70 cents. Check fold from everybody. Looks like Spirit is isolating on the button. So that's probably the sign that, you know, it's probably a reg, probably got reg ranges, basically. So that 3-bet on the button could have been anything. Min raise, flat call. Not going to be playing 10-5 of diamonds. Don't really want to squeeze with this hand versus that weirdo sizing. I would be more in line with flatting or squeezing with a more playable hand, basically. Something that at least makes straights. Or having a little bit of knowledge about Shag's min raise pre-flop. If we don't know anything about him whatsoever, we're just going to be flatting with our playable hands on the button. Throw a few squeezes in that make sense. Some of our least playable hands for flatting. And then, like say something like 10-6. 10-6 of diamonds makes straights, but it doesn't really have much value. It's not amazing in a multi-way pot. 9-10 suited is much more playable in a multi-way pot. So if Shag does have a very strong range for squeezing, I'd rather get roasted when we had 10 or for facing a squeeze. You know, when he's min raising essentially. I would rather get roasted when we have the 10-6 and not lose much than the 9-10 suited, which is going to be more playable in a multi-way pot. So that just kind of the top of your folding range has traditionally been the types of hands that are good to turn into bluffs, and that is often still the case. So, and of course, you could employ a strategy where you just don't bluff at all in that spot versus the min raise and just kind of take your spots on the button as you see them, calling with your pocket pairs, your suited connectors, your playable broadways, a little bit wider because of the price, etc. Raise it up with pocket 6s, and 5-8-2 is going to be the flop. We have straight draws, flush draws, and we have the best hand a good bit of the time, so we're going to bet here for protection. both because we'll win the pot quite frequently and we protect our hand from all of the equity that the overs have. It would be a worse situation for us to check and allow them to realize equity or put us in a weird spot than it would be for us to bet and then get called and then have to face action on the turn. Here, Roman just decides to raise to an ungodly, abstract $3.20 with not much in the pot. We're just going to assume that he likes his hand. Either that or the gentleman misclicked, which can sometimes be the case as well. We get a pot-sized raise from Spirit. Roman, minimum 3 bets. Don't know what that means range-wise. We'll end up seeing here. That's a good board texture for both of the players, really. Spirit's going to have a lot of pocket pairs in his range here, so Roman can get away with a bunch of C-bets. Don't think he'd be slow playing ace-king on this texture, so it looks like he just has some sort of small pocket pair himself. We have blockers to some of the smaller pocket pairs. The king on the turn is fine for Roman if he decided to check something like king-jack suited. A lot of the time, if you see a minimum 3-bet from a casual player, they just want to build a pot with a hand that they like, you know, because clearly they're not min-raising or minimum 3-betting because they want you to fold. So what sort of a hand wants you to continue? It's either something really strong like aces, which often they bet bigger with, or something that they like a suited connector or a medium strength pair, and they just want to build the pot. You know, oftentimes in live games, that's called a little sweetener. Just right, just a little sweetener. You'll hear guys say that. It's just a little sweetener. Because they have a pair, they have a hand that could, like the nuts, ace 5 suited, something like that, and they don't want you to fold pre-flop. They just want to build a big pot in case they hit. That is often the mindset. So just, other than knowing what your range should look like from a balance perspective, understanding what your opponent's strategy is an extremely important part of poker. Because at the end of the day, you make the most money by exploiting what their frequencies are, because no one's playing in a balanced manner in these games. Maybe you have some reg bros like Spirit who are aware of it. At the end of the day, live poker, online poker, wherever you're playing cash games, exploiting your opponents is going to make you the most money. Balance is used as a tool to protect yourself in spots where the unknown is the biggest variable. If I don't know that he has a bluff here, if I don't know that he's capable of this sizing, that sizing, if you are faced with the unknown, then balance makes the most sense, because balance is a way to not lose money more than it's a way to win money. Can you still make money playing in a balanced manner? Of course. If your opponent's frequencies are so crazy that your balanced play is still generating profit against them, yes, you're not ever going to lose money. And if they're out of balance, then you're going to win money. So you're still winning money with balanced play, but it's a good way to protect yourself if you have the unknown element. If you don't know what his bluffing frequency looks like in a spot, if you don't know how these opponents are playing, how aggressive they are, their capabilities, then balance makes a lot of sense. But you should look for any good and clear information to divert from that as quickly as possible. Now, I don't mean just, flying off the handle at one sign of a 3-bet bluff, something like that. But just in general, anytime you can get some relatively good and clear information that you can exploit, like bet sizing, anything. You need some samples, of course. You can't just go running in, like I said. But anytime you can get that, and it does seem relatively clear, then it's a good time to shift your range and try to exploit them, because that is what's going to make you the most money in the long term. So quickly noticing that a guy is folding too much, you might start bluffing him a lot until he seems to be adjusting, or he starts running into hands. Or if a guy is just super aggressive, seems to be 3-betting every other hand, then you might open a tighter range and start 4-bet bluffing. What is my opponent's strategy and how can I best take advantage of it? And if you don't know what your opponent's strategy is, then balance is going to be your best strategy. So it's you got to kind of weather the storm in poker. You never know what's going to happen from session to session. You never know how someone's going to be feeling that day, what cards you're going to be dealt. Maintaining a consistent thought process, a consistent mindset, and maintaining just consistency in your personal management. How many hours am I playing? What days, what times am I playing? What mental state am I playing in? When you start to feel that you're not playing your A game, you start to feel that you're not, making the best decisions, then it's time to quit your session, refresh, do whatever. Take care of yourself, make sure that you're rested, take care of yourself, make sure that you're well fed, nourished. All of these things are important factors in being a winning good poker player that don't rely on the game itself. You can have all the game skill that you want, but even if you were the best player in the world, as an example, but you managed yourself poorly, you didn't play that many hours, you didn't take care of yourself, you ate poorly, you did drugs all night, and then you fucking woke up at 7 p.m. and got to the table at 10 and played till 12, and all this type of shit is just going to fuck you up. You're not going to accrue that which your skill set would otherwise allow you to. So that opens the door for a lesser player, someone who doesn't have the technical skill you have but is better at personal management, to come in and take your market share, essentially. So you just have to continually work on both of those aspects of the game. You have to be good at personal management. You have to be good at the game itself. So, and I employ both of those types of strategies, both balanced and exploitative, especially in a live game. But online, it's a little bit different. If you've got a guy who is a reg, you're pretty sure he's going to be capable of bluffing. Maybe he has the same sort of reg tendencies where he doesn't bluff enough on the river, or all of his overbets are heavily weighted towards value, or perhaps in this day and age, all the overbets are heavily weighted towards bluffs. It's hard to say. So just kind of playing in a balanced manner, protect yourself, and then find things to exploit as fast as possible is a good way to approach poker. Other than that, focus on your mental game, focus on personal management skills. We're going to isolate here with red aces against Roman, who is steadily losing his stack. And that is a good board texture for us. It's one where we can still get called by gut shots here. When he leads in this scenario, we can make a small raise, or we could go. I mean, this is so weak from them often. I'm just going to go ahead and call. A jack or a 10 would be the worst cards on the turn, just because it puts up all the gut shots. I kind of want to just make a small raise here for Roman, because he can't be that strong. He can't really be that strong at all. He might have two pair in a weird world, but most of the time he doesn't have much here at all. He's just kind of bluffing or frustrated. And we just kind of want to give him a little something to perhaps taste. It doesn't work out for us, and, that's going to happen sometimes too. That's what I mean in that scenario. I don't really want to just call just because we can build a pot if he does have two pair there. We're probably getting all the money if we raise, and if he doesn't have anything, maybe he just gives up on the river if he doesn't. Perhaps he had something like a gut shot, or he bet bigger on the turn because he picked up something like 6-7. Now he's got a straight draw he didn't have before. The whole thing is just a small raise there will allow him to either spew off right now or just call frustratingly with a gut shot, something like that. Just be frustrated, call the gut shot. It still allows him to make mistakes. But at the end of the day, a call there on the turn would not be bad at all. We're blocking all the top pairs, and he's not very likely to have much of anything in that spot. So I could kind of go back and forth in that scenario, but I don't mind a small raise either. A small raise or a call are both perfectly fine plays. It didn't work out this time, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't okay, and that's something to keep in mind as well. Just because a play doesn't work out doesn't mean that it wasn't a good play. It doesn't mean that it wasn't the best play. You just kind of have to look at each play from a variable perspective. So if I flat the turn, I'm not going to see that many bad rivers. And we don't know what sort of a bluffing frequency he's going to have on the river. Maybe he bets the river as a bluff. Maybe he never does. So there's unknown value there. And then if I raise the turn, I might never get called by a gut shot, or he might call with a gut shot all the time. Now, given that when he bets twice in that scenario and increases his bet size, it seems that he's either got some sort of a straight draw, or maybe at the top of his range he has two pairs set. Maybe he's just got a king. Maybe he had an 8 on the turn. Maybe he's got the case ace. It seems like the kind of hands that would bet the turn that would call a raise would go down to perhaps his straight draws, and then, because it was a very small raise. And then if I flat call, I don't build the pot. He might not bluff the river. So there's kind of positives and negatives. I like to think about it from both perspectives and then make a decision. So the benefits to betting or raising the turn are that if he's calling down to straight draws, then we get to build a bigger pot. And obviously our hand doesn't need that much protection there. So we build a bigger pot so that when he does have something, we're going to take more of his money, because obviously on the river, you want to get that full $8 in there. And the negative is that you take away his ability to bluff. is kind of the negative. So that's the biggest benefit to raising is that when he does have something, we get more value, we build a bigger pot, we get to get more of his stack on the river, and then the negative is that we don't allow him to bluff, and anybody could have a 3 or an ace in this spot, guys. So we're just going to go ahead and check our Jack-8 down in the 4-way pot, which I think is perfectly reasonable to do. And over here, we're just going to go ahead and make a big 3-bet with our kings and try to isolate. We're probably just going to be losing to a 10 here or something in that pot, but that's okay. We're going to be getting all the money in here with our pocket kings. You don't really get cold 4-bet that much, so I'm assuming that we're going to be up against aces, ace-king, queens, mostly just value combos. But nonetheless, when you got kings, you're getting it in. And then the rest is up to the cards, you know. So if he hits that queen on the river, that is kind of what it is. But yeah, take any decision that you're looking at, just kind of take it. It's just step by step. Look at the benefits, look at the negatives, and kind of weigh them out. So the benefits would be we get more money in the pot there. We take away his ability to bluff is kind of the negative. And then the negatives to calling is that maybe we would have missed out on building the pot. So in that spot, I could honestly just go both ways. And if the opponent seems kind of bluffy, then maybe just flatting is always best. And if he doesn't seem very bluffy, then maybe raising is always best. So I honestly think that a mixed strategy would be fine there. Probably should lean towards calling. Here we get minimum 3-bet, so we're just going to go ahead and call. We make pretty close to the nuts on the turn. 4-6 is a hand that we're going to lose to. This is generally not going to be a bluff from our opponent, so we're going to go ahead and this is going to commit us to the hand. So we're just going to go ahead and shove on the turn here to beat his sets and 2 pairs and whatnot. He ends up having king jack of spades. But yeah, that often is not a bluff from our opponent. So just go ahead and shovel it on in there. Pretty good spot for us for the most part. But yeah, the reason why we just flat called pre-flop is because whenever we get 3-bet, it kind of puts our hand into a bluff catcher scenario. Because if we re-raise, we're likely only going to get action from queens plus, and then, of course, coin flips, which we don't really have much of an edge on. And then if we flat call, especially 3-way, we can win a big pot, we can play efficiently post-flop. We just have better combinations to be re-raising with in general pre-flop. So it's not the best spot to be re-raising with jacks. Now, there is a bit more reason to re-raise them when Reginald's in there, but, you know, honestly, we haven't seen Spirit do one of those weirdo kind of min-raise sizing, so who knows? Maybe he wasn't paying attention. You know, it's hard to say. We end up calling a raise here. We're going to put a check raise in with our 10-7 in this spot, top 2 pair. Not a great turn card. 6-9 could be out there. Jack-9 would have usually bet the flop, and now we lose to 8-10 and pocket 8s as well. So out of all the turn cards we could see, this one connects with a bunch of combinations. Some of them are filtered out, so they're not really in their range anymore. And we'll just be fine taking that down. Can't really complain about that in the least. So yeah, so I'm kind of indifferent to raising or calling on that turn with the set of aces. And I think that we should probably err on the side of calling, but raising at some frequency is okay too, to be honest with you. I know that's not a great answer because it's not definitive, but that's the thing, is that sometimes it's not going to be definitive. You know, I don't really think I need to protect my calling range against that opponent or anything like that. It's really more about what's going to build the biggest pot against this opponent when he does have a hand to stack off, or what's going to let him bluff the most. And honestly, when I make a small sizing like that, it's not uncommon for these guys to take a flat call, flat call with a gut shot, and then, lead for pot on the river when they miss. So we might still get a bunch of value for raising on the turn. So I'm not unhappy to have raised the turn for sure. It didn't work out this time, but I'm not unhappy with it. And then with the Jack's hand, that min 3-bet and then a flat call, generally a cold flat call there can be a little bit wider because of the fact that the minimum 3-bet, obviously it's a smaller 3-bet, so it's a smaller bet for him to have to call. This guy just limping on the button. We're going to go ahead and isolate here, out of position, raise it up with our ace-8 of clubs. But yeah, I like the flat call there. This is a pretty good spot for us. Go ahead and half pot continuation bet. We should get a decent amount of action here. We're going to be losing to 8-10 now and 5-8, but nonetheless, it's a spot where we should be double barreling. He could still have 9x. He can have 8-9 and a bunch of other 9-10. He could pick up diamonds. We're going to check and fold on the Queen 7 Jack board with 2 spades, though. Ace-8 of clubs, obviously nothing going on whatsoever. So yeah, like I said, the minimum 3-bet kind of puts our jacks into a bluff catcher mode, or like, you know, there's just better combinations for us to be re-raising there. So I don't think that's too bad. And then on the turn, we definitely want to raise the turn with 2 flush draws out there, and the jack doesn't really connect with much of anything that's going on. The jack is a card that he doesn't have that often unless he has Jack X of spades. There's a lot of flush draws out there, so no one's ever folding a set. If he ends up having a straight, we have boat outs. You can have a set, you can have a pair. Even a pair of 10s in that spot's probably not going to be folding that much, 10s or 9s, just because there's so many draws. So that ends up being a very nice spot for us to go ahead and shove. Since a raise is going to commit our stack anyway, kind of prefer just a little overbet shove in that spot. Raise it up with our king-queen offsuit on the button. We'll take that one down. King 7 of diamonds. We're just going to go ahead and raise. This is a hand where you don't always have to raise. I definitely raise it on the button all the time, and in the cutoff it kind of depends on the table. Spirit is definitely 3-bet a couple of times. If he seems to be 3-betting at a super crazy pace, then we'll just fuck it up, and we'll not fuck it up. We'll just go ahead and what am I even saying? We'll fuck it up. I said it would be fucking it up if we kept raising at a high frequency. We'd be fucking it up. So we're just going to raise until they show us that we can't, essentially. And I think 3-handed, there's a little bit more value in betting this than if you're heads up, just because you get to define range a bit faster. You can make them fold. We clearly have equity. We block king-queen, which sometimes gets 3-bet, sometimes doesn't. And that's not a bad card for us, ace-3 and ace-queen. But again, ace-queen gets 3-bet sometimes, and a 3 will often fold here. Plus, there's a lot of pocket pairs between 4 and 8 or 9 that are going to fold on this turn. And yes, we'll sometimes run into a queen. But we still have equity against a queen. And there's not a ton of boats here that aren't queen 9. And if he has a flush, then he often has a worse flush here. So I do think that this is a value bet, and it's not going to be a spot where we're going to want to call a raise. So we're going to make a relatively large bet to get value from a queen. And if he decides to shove, that's pretty much going to be one of those no fold equity shoves where we'll probably have to hem and haw and fold. It's not great. We're going to lose to boats. You might have the nut flush, small frequency. Of course, you can have that as well. So it ends up not being a great spot. But the bigger bet is also going to make it less likely that he's going to be bluffing, since people don't really bluff as often when they don't. It doesn't look like they can make you fold something. Kind of a couple relevant hands in this scenario. But yeah, I like to look at both perspectives, and I think it'll help you grow as a player to consider both sides of the coin when you're looking at decisions. Don't just think about what the local expert would think or what he would say. Yes, consider that, and don't just think about what a solver would say or what the most balanced, unexploitable manner of playing is. Yes, you should look at that as well. But at the end of the day, you should look at all the variables that you have, all of the different options that you have, and be choosing the one that makes the most sense. Which one makes more sense? If I don't have any information on my opponent, then perhaps a balanced play makes more sense. And if I have a lot of good information on my opponent, even though a play might not have worked this time, maybe the play that I made makes the most sense. But if you look at a play, don't think about it from only your perspective. Think about it from both sides of the coin, kind of arguing for both sides. Like, okay, well, if I bet, these are the positives and negatives to betting. These are the positives and negatives to folding, or whichever else you're going to do, and then choose the one that makes the most sense. And if you're constantly doing that, you probably see some nice results. A third pot, we have top pair, backdoor straight and flush draws. Unless shag raises, going to be a pretty straightforward call for us. And then we'll play a turn here. Not a great turn card, but at the same time, there are a ton of draws still. And then he checks back, which means he generally doesn't have much of anything. We have a 6, blocking 6-7 bluffs. He might have checked a 10 on the turn. I'm going to go ahead and check again because he can bet a jack, or he can bet a 10 on the river. If he has a 10, then he's got a better kicker than mine. And in this case, he just had a 5 and checked it down. Now, if we had bet the river, he definitely would have called some frequency. I think I'm going to check my jacks on the river to go ahead and call some, and I'm going to split my 10s between calls and value bets. And I want to value bet probably a little bit bigger of a kicker so that I can beat some of the kickers he has. And of course, we can get called by a 5, maybe at some frequency, not at a high frequency. But when we have a 10 without a big kicker, If we don't think that our opponent is double barreling at a high frequency with his 10x combos on a jack high turn, then there's a pretty good chance that we're out kicked if he does have a 10. So I'd rather check and call with my trips, or even check raise at some small frequency depending on the guy, but mostly you're not going to get any value from that unless he's paying off with a jack, which would be more of an exploitative play. And if that was the case, then we'd probably do that with a lot of our jacks, regardless of kicker, just because the checking and raising is going to make us more money against his range than betting and hoping that he calls poorly. We flat here with jack 9 suited, and I could go either way with it. I think that 3-betting at some small frequency is reasonable. 3-betting on the button versus a later position, it makes a lot of sense. 3-betting against the guy directly to our right would be fine. You know, there's times to 3-bet here, flat call, and there's even some times to fold this type of a combo, depending on the activity at the table. Playable hands like that, they really just, you can pretty much do whatever you want with them. I would err on the side of 3-betting more than flatting, and then for the gap, non-gap and 1-gappers, err on the side of flatting a little bit more than folding, and then folding at a lower, the lowest frequency essentially. All right, guys, that is going to be this video. I will see you guys with part 2 in just a little bit. Hope you've enjoyed this one.